While I get that set up, part of the reason we did this was that by weird coincidence, last week we ended up each picking something that the other one knew something about. And shock of shocks, it turned out that it, it was more interesting when we could actually discuss and compare our thoughts on something rather than going, that certainly sounds like a piece of media you consumed, DB.
Yes, very interesting. Yeah.
I definitely have context on this. So,
Yes.
So we're going to try this whole swap recommendation thing here.
Yes. So I'm going first. I watched Cautious Hero. The hero is overpowered but overly cautious. This was DB's thing of the week a few months back, and he said, and he of course wanted me to recommend it. I watched it, so I watched it. Of course, with series, it's the 3-episode rule.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually watched 5 episodes so far.
So that's an encouraging sign that you wanted to go past the bare minimum.
Yes. If you missed that episode of the show and didn't hear what the synopsis was, I'll give it briefly. So this is I would say kind of a meta isekai. It's of course it's from the perspective of the goddess Rista, and she's has to take on an S-class quest or mission or whatever, and she needs to find a hero. And of course, I think what part I really liked in the episode was she's going through all these different heroes that are to pull from. She's like, okay, I've been going to Japan because they seem to get this pretty well. And she's just going through all the names, and they all sound exactly the same, and they're all it's almost exactly the same, which just kind of goes into the whole narrative. The whole thing with the main characters in isekais are just like carbon copies of each other.
Different flavors of Kirito.
Yes. But she finally comes across a hero that is just insanely powered. And oh god, I can't remember his name. It starts with an S.
Geez, I can't remember now either. You find it first.
But anyway,
Seiya.
Seiya, thank you, Seiya. So she gets Seiya, and of course she's just immediately smitten by him, and then
Shikshpak.
Oh, Shikshpak.
If you watched the Japanese version.
And so, but then she quickly finds out that he's just, he's too cautious. The reason he's so overpowered is because he's so cautious. He's just like, everything is very deliberate, and everything, he takes everything with has to weigh every option before he does something. Mm-hmm. And he's of course insane trainer. He's always working out all the time. And so, in the first episode, she takes him to this village, and she thinks this one guy that meets a shapeshifter. He's like, no, he's just a normal guy. And then, then he goes. They go to the weapon store, and he's buying armor, and he needs 3 sets of armor. One for wearing, a spare, and then a spare for the spare. So then he goes, he buys a bunch of smoke bombs and everything, and then he goes out and sees this little slime that has like 8 hit points. Obliterates it, But that's kind of part of the whole thing. The whole shtick is that she's just, he annoys the crap out of her, and kind of scares a lot of people with how, just how intense he is and everything. One of the things I kind of like about it too is usually in an anime like this, where you have a character that's just has all these powers and just destroys everything. It's usually because they're like reckless, and they kind of like, they don't think before they act, and they're doing this. But with him, it's the opposite. He's always thinking before he acts, but the results are always the same. He still causes a huge amount of destruction.
Right. It isn't like he goes out of control. It's that no, he's very in control, and he's going to blast the dead vampire with the town consuming fireball 12 times just to make sure.
Yeah. And then and then he gets into like he has this like meteor attack, and he'll like he lobs a couple of meteors at this bad guy, and he's like, oh, I'm so weak. And she's like, oh no, are you okay? And he said, I had 1500 MP, now I only have 1300. Like, what?
Yeah, I think it's a very unique way to deal with having an overpowered character. Make it somebody else's problem in the universe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and yeah, and obviously, the overly cautious part of it definitely helps with the whole things being so easy for him, because it's like you don't have a problem that gets resolved right away. He could resolve it right whenever he felt like it. He just doesn't. He wants to be absolutely sure.
Yep. Now, do you have any criticisms of the show?
Um. I think that probably the only criticism is that he Seiya does come across as a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say like it kind of the joke kind of does wear a little thin after a while, but yeah.
So you're 5 episodes in out of the 12 or 13.
Mhm.
I can tell you that if you keep watching, they are about to actually start giving him problems because the enemies are about to start actually getting near his level.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And you're going to find out why he's overly cautious. And it's going to be like, well, I thought this was a happy, fun show. Like, wait, tragedy? What?
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So they are going somewhere with it. But
Okay.
and I think what I thought was interesting was I think around the point that I had gotten as far as you had, I
Mhm.
was kind of thinking the same thing. And it's like
Yeah.
they knew exactly how long to push the gag before they kind of got into the more serious side of it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because where I left off, you had the two kids that are the demon, the I almost said demon kin because I'm thinking magpie wizard, uh, dragonkin, and you got of course, were they? I'm trying to remember. Are they related, or are they just friends?
I think they're brother and sister.
Okay. Yeah. So the brother is he's this very powerful dragon kin whatever, and then the girl is like, no, she's very weak, and they're gonna use her as a sacrifice. Huh?
Oh yeah, it's okay. I was wondering if you'd gotten that far.
Yeah, that's where that was where I left off. Yeah.
Okay. Now, yeah. So I'm glad that you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah.
It's it's kind of gratifying because this is one that my anime watching group had kind of lost interest in after a couple of episodes. I was like, why? This is great.
Yeah.
So it's nice to get some confirmation that I wasn't insane.
Yeah. No, it's a fun show, and yeah, I it's definitely nice to have an isekai that isn't the same show over and over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, my thing of the week was 1989's Batman, which I had never actually seen before, which is astounding for a lifelong Batman fan. But it's just like because of my age when it came out, and
Hmm.
just never got around to it.
Yeah. Which is
Uh,
which is interesting because I was obsessed with this movie when I was a kid.
yeah, I just never got around to it.
Mm,
For those who like me have been living under a Batman rock, this was so it wasn't the first live action adaptation of Batman in theaters. That was technically a 1930s and 40s Batman serial,
mm,
uh, but it was the first in the modern era, where basically it was basically, I guess, somebody at Warner Brothers or DC going, well, that Superman movie made a lot of money. Why not do something for the other guy?
yeah.
Actually, no. I guess there was an Adam West Batman movie too, like straight to
Yeah,
theaters.
right. That's right. Yeah.
But post Adam West,
Yes.
and from like kind of a meta perspective, this was a pseudo adaptation of kind of the more what I call like the Frank Miller-ish Batman, or the I guess like the Denny O'Neil Frank Miller-ish Batman, where it's more serious
Hmm. Yeah.
as opposed to being campy and fun. Although this is not like a super serial movie.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
um, it's interesting because so the basic plot of it is that it's the introduction of Batman to the city. Like he's a rumor at the start of the movie. He goes around roughing up people who are committing crimes. You see how crime-ridden Gotham is, how corrupt it is, and you have Vicky Vale here who shows up, having been a war correspondent, wanting to get a picture of Batman and find out about him. Now, I forgot to look this up. Was the other reporter played by Joe Piscopo?
No, he was played by oh God, I can't remember his name. Um,
Because he felt like that kind of Joe Piscopo '80s comedian, where it's like, oh, Robert Wool. Okay,
yeah, Robert. Yeah.
I've never heard of that gentleman before. I
He was on like I think he did like a TV show in the '90s. I can't remember the name of it, but
see
yeah.
here. He did a few episodes of American Dad. All right, I'm very curious. Okay, um, Bull Durham. Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh, that's right. He was in Bull. Oh, that's right. He was in Bull Durham. Oh, candlesticks are nice. He was that guy.
I've never actually seen Bull Durham. Maybe that's my thing next week. We'll see. Like I swore that was like Joe Piscopo because he was kind of funny, but it was also like he felt like very much a supporting funny character.
Yeah.
Like he wouldn't be able to like headline something by himself was the feeling I got. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Mm.
So uh, so Vicky ends up getting into Bruce Wayne's life because she goes to a function and he decides that he likes her.
Mhm.
They actually sleep together, which is kind of like very early in the movie, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah. Yeah. That was yeah. Of course, when I was a kid, I didn't get what that was all about.
Oh, they're just hanging out together. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and in the background, you also have Joe Napier, the
Jack. Napier.
Jack Napier, the who's the second in command to Jack Palance, who's which in a great role. Jack Palance is always great to see in anything
Oh yeah.
as the main crime boss of the city. And you see just how corrupt they are because the cop, who I can't believe isn't Harvey Bullock, it basically gets basically puts out a hit on Jack.
Yeah.
And in the process of things, Batman did he slice his face by throwing a batarang at him? Is that what cut him up? Or
It was a ricochet from a bullet.
oh, okay.
Yeah, the bullet bounced off and then it ricocheted and hit him.
Okay. I didn't quite catch what happened in that scene. It's like
Yeah.
Ricochet gets him across the face. He falls into the vat of acid.
Mhm.
I and he becomes the Joker.
Yeah.
Now I will say, there are so many references, homages, and things like that that made much more sense. Like like when when Joker wants to see well, we have done everything we can for your face. The
Yeah.
nerves were totally severed. The
The
mirror.
mirror. The mirror.
The
Yeah.
mirror. They use that in The Simpsons for a scene where Lisa got braces and wanted to see.
Yeah.
Um, so just like a lot of pop culture references are now making sense and clicking after having actually seen this. But and so the rest of the movie is basically a collision course between Batman and Joker.
Mhm.
So I will say that the movie has kind of a slow second act, partially because it's a bit too focused on Vicky Vale here, who is played by
Kim Basinger.
Kim Basinger, who I've heard multiple people describe her as having like the acting range of a plank of wood.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Like she's she's all right, but the movie's more interested in her than I think other people would be.
Yeah, and I found her screaming every 5 seconds to be rather grating.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Um, Jack Nicholson as the Joker is a treat in every scene he's in.
Mhm.
I remember at the time when they came out with the Dark Knight and they had other Joker.
Heath Ledger.
Thank you. It's been a long day, folks. Sorry.
Yeah.
Heath Ledger is the Joker, and Jack was talking about how insulted he was that he hadn't been invited back. I was like, "Oh, come on, man, you're old. Like, who would possibly want to see you now? Now I kind of want to see that alternate reality where they tried to make that version of or make him play that version of the Joker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and he's great in every scene. He's having so much fun. He owns this movie.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Um, and then you have Michael Keaton as Batman. I can tell you that he isn't using the Jerry curl anymore. Like his hair is so aggressively curly that it's almost amusing.
Yeah, 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 it is a little weird seeing seeing him with hair, and then of course now you look at him, he's bald as a chimp. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but he makes a good Batman. I'm not sure how good of a Bruce Wayne he makes, though. He lost some points for that. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
yeah,
Same with the Joker.
yeah. I would agree with you there. Yeah, he doesn't really he doesn't really have the playboy you know
Yeah. It's
feel to him.
definitely like a it almost feels like a predecessor to Robert Pattinson's Joker, where not Joker, Robert Pattinson's Batman,
Batman.
where he
Yeah.
feels damaged.
Hmm.
But it's just like rather than being mopey emo, it's more like just awkward.
Yeah, reclusive billionaire. Yeah,
Yes. Like very nice guy, well meaning, but just isn't sure how to interact with people.
yeah,
Which I guess does fit for somebody who decides that his approach to fighting crime is to dress up like a bat and beat up hoods in the streets. So,
yeah.
that's a valid interpretation.
Yes.
Um, I was also this movie kind of presaged the Snyder stuff because boy, Batman has a body count if you really think about it. Considering he like uses a grenade and blows up a building full of mobsters in it.
Yeah.
So I don't really like that. That isn't
Yeah.
how I feel like Batman should be.
Yeah, yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. Yeah, it was a little jarring, but I mean, I guess that was the tone Tim Burton was going for was a darker interpretation.
Right. Also, you can feel the Tim Burton fingerprints all over this movie. I
Hmm.
think that might even be some of why Batman is kind of the awkward guy he is because that's kind of what Tim Burton does if you give him creative control.
Yeah, and I will say, like, he didn't have as much creative control with this movie as he did with like Batman Returns.
Okay.
Like Batman Returns, that is a full on Tim Burton movie.
Well, I give you something to look forward to when I eventually get around to it. The,
Yeah.
the other embarrassing thing is I've had a 4 disc DVD collection for a long time of the Batman movies, and the way I had used it so far is I had watched riff tracks of 3 and 4 because they're not as good. I just never gotten around to watching the first two. But so overall, I see what the big deal is now.
Mm.
I see, especially if I take myself out of the being spoiled for choice with Batman movies. Like if this was the first Batman movie that had ever actually come out, I see why this was a big freaking deal.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, this was the movie of 1989. I mean, it was.
Hmm.
I mean, it changed the way movies were marketed too. I mean,
Hmm.
they plugged this movie really hard. Yeah,
Yep. So thank you for this recommendation. It
yeah.
nudged me to do something I should have done ages ago.
Yes, yeah. Well, you're welcome.
Now, in less successful superhero news, we have our